Welcome to Daily Review, your daily dose of literary exploration. We dive into books that spark curiosity and ignite growth. While our passion often leads us to nonfiction reads that empower and improve your life, really, no book is off limits. From gripping thrillers to insightful memoirs, compelling fiction, historical accounts, we're here to share and discuss all the interesting reads we discover. So tune in for your next great book idea. And thank you so much for tuning in to Daily Review today. We truly appreciate you joining us for your daily dose of literary exploration. Your support means the world to us, it really does, and helps us continue to share these amazing books with you. If you're enjoying what you hear, please consider taking just a moment to subscribe, rate, like, and comment on whatever platform you're listening from. This really helps support our channel and allows us to get better and bring you even more great content. Also, if today's review sparks your interest and you're ready to dive into a copy of the book yourself, please consider using the link in our description to make your purchase. Not only does it make it easy for you to get your hands on the book, but it also directly supports our channel and the author, allowing us to keep bringing you more great reviews. Thanks again for being part of the Daily Review community. Okay, so let's unpack this. Few things are as fundamental to, well, human interaction as truth and lies, right? We talk about honesty all the time. We say we value it, above almost everything else. And yet, paradoxically, we engage with lies, maybe small ones, maybe bigger ones, on a daily basis. How often do we really stop and think about the actual definitions? What is truth? What is a lie? Beyond just that surface-level feeling, it's a really complex and honestly often contradictory landscape.
It absolutely is. And that's precisely our mission for this deep dive today. We're drawing insights from a really fascinating book, one that genuinely challenges our preconceptions about honesty and dives deep into the intricate psychology of deception.
Right.
So this deep dive is all about extracting the most, let's say, important nuggets of knowledge. The goal is to equip you, our listener, with better tools to understand yourself and others too when it comes to truth-telling and, well, lie-telling.
Mm-hmm.
What's so fascinating here, I think, is how the source material doesn't just define lies. It goes further. It exposes the intricate why behind them. Why do we do it? And crucially, how can we maybe identify and navigate them in our daily lives?
Yeah, because it's not just about pointing fingers.
Exactly. It's not about saying, that's bad. It's about understanding the nuances of the human condition, really, and the complex motivations that, drive our actions.
That's right. Because it is so much more nuanced than just a simple binary of good or bad. Let's start with what the author calls the honesty paradox, because I think this immediately highlights just how deceptive the simplicity of telling the truth can be.
Okay.
So the author begins an exercise with groups. They ask them first off, define honesty as a core value. And apparently 90% of the time, honesty is enthusiastically suggested, like right away.
Almost automatic.
Yes. Everyone nods along saying, yes, we want that. That's essential. Honesty first.
And that's where the author then pushes them a bit further. Good, they're told. Honesty sounds great. Okay, now define what it means, and specifically, how should a person behave to demonstrate that they are being 100% honest?
Ah, the specifics.
Exactly. This is where the exercise truly starts to unravel that initial enthusiasm. It gets complicated fast.
And this is where it gets particularly insightful, I think. The immediate crumbling of that initial enthusiasm is really striking.
Yeah.
At first it seems so simple, right? Just tell the truth, always.
Easy on paper.
But then, almost inevitably, someone raises a dilemma. Okay, what about lying to customers? Specifically customers who are themselves being dishonest or, manipulative. Do you have to be honest with them, even if they're trying to take advantage of you or the system?
Do they deserve the truth? That's the question that comes up.
Exactly. Do they even deserve the truth if they're being deceitful themselves? And then it just kind of snowballs from there. Another person might ask about a situation where telling the absolute unvarnished truth would cause immense pain or harm to someone innocent.
Right, the brutal honesty dilemma.
Precisely. And what follows is this lengthy debate, usually resulting in a series of unresolved dilemmas and, well, uncomfortable silences. The consistent outcome the author finds after running this exercise countless times is quite stark. Honesty hasn't managed to make it to the end of this exercise once in all my times running it.
Wow. Not once.
Not once. And what this tells us is that our collective understanding of honesty is far from simple or universally agreed upon. It's a concept we claim to value above all else, maybe, but one we struggle to concretely define or consistently apply in practice. It really reveals the inherent contradictions in our own moral frameworks.
And this difficulty, this struggle in defining honesty, it leads us directly to the challenge of defining what a lie actually is. The author even recounts how their own publishers demanded a clear definition right from the start. They knew it's crucial for any meaningful discussion on the subject.
You need a baseline.
You do. The simplest definition I suppose one might offer is, well, a lie is lying. But as the source material points out, things are rarely that black and white out there in the real world. The core component, the thing that really elevates false information to the level of a real lie, is intent.
Intent.
It's not enough for information to simply be factually incorrect. There has to be an underlying motive, a purpose, to deliberately mislead or deceive. It's actually very similar to the legal distinctions we make in a courtroom, like premeditated murder versus manslaughter.
Ah, interesting parallel.
Yeah, the outcome for the victim might be the same tragically. Life is lost. But the legal and moral implications differ vastly because of the intent behind the action. A lie, in its truest sense, is a conscious, purposeful act of deception.
Okay, so if someone unknowingly passes on false information, maybe they misheard something or they're just repeating something they genuinely believed was true but turns out it wasn't accurate. That doesn't really qualify as a lie in this framework because there's no intention to mislead there.
Exactly right. No intent, not really a lie in the moral sense we're discussing.
So a real lie has a clear purpose behind it.
Right.
A conscious choice to mislead in order to achieve something, whether that's personal gain or avoiding consequences or maybe even trying to protect someone else.
Precisely. And then, of course, there's that significant gray area. What about not telling the whole story? Or deliberately withholding facts? Does that count as a lie?
That's a tricky one.
It is. The source material suggests it depends largely on the motive for withholding the information and, crucially, how much potential there is for that omission to be misleading. If information is deliberately left out with the specific aim of misleading someone, then yeah, that's certainly tantamount to lying.
Like the car salesman example you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The car seller who knows the brakes are faulty but conveniently forgets to mention it to a potential buyer. That's lying through omission. Their intention is clearly to deceive for financial gain.
Right.
But if details are left out unintentionally, perhaps because they seemed genuinely irrelevant at the time, or if the person truly didn't know the omitted fact, like the car seller who genuinely didn't know the brakes were faulty, then it's not a lie in the same way. It might be negligence maybe, or just bad luck for the buyer, but not deliberate deception.
So the crucial element, always, is to sort of look in the mirror, evaluate your own motives.
Yeah.
Are you deliberately trying to create a false impression? Or is the omission truly innocent?
That's the heart of it. Honesty with oneself about the why.
It really is a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah.
This whole concept of truth and lies. They often feel like two sides of the same coin, especially when intentions get mixed up. The book gives this powerful anecdote, it really stuck with me, about a father whose 8-year-old daughter loses her absolute favorite toy.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he tragically sees it get crushed under a car wheel. Just heartbreaking, right, for any parent. But instead of delivering that brutal, devastating truth right then and there, he tells her it went to the toy hospital and promises it will be back when it's all mended.
The protective lie.
Exactly. And the author notes this lie is a mixture of good and selfish intentions. On one hand, he genuinely wants to shield her from that immediate heartbreak, the profound grief that would come with such a sudden, violent loss.
Understandable.
But on the other hand, it also, conveniently perhaps, saves him from having to deal with her overwhelming sadness in that moment, which is, let's be honest, a difficult emotional burden for any parent to handle.
That's a very insightful framing. And this anecdote, I think, beautifully illustrates a core insight from the source. Lies can indeed protect people. They can grant them a kind of temporary sanctuary from the, brutality of the truth sometimes. We see this with common white lies, where the primary intention really is just to spare feelings or avoid unnecessary distress.
Like telling your friend their new haircut looks great when maybe it doesn't.
Exactly, or the surprise party example. But it's a fine line, isn't it? Because on the flip side, lies can also be told for purely selfish reasons, for personal gain, out of jealousy, or to manipulate others. And these types of lies inherently risk harming trust in the long run, often with pretty devastating consequences. The short-term benefit might seem appealing, maybe it gets you out of a tight spot, but they fundamentally undermine the trust that is, the bedrock of all meaningful relationships, whether they're personal or professional. The consequences of that kind of deception are far-reaching and often incredibly long-lasting.
And we've all probably been on both sides of that coin, haven't we? I mean, let's be real. We've likely told a protective lie at some point, maybe to spare someone's feelings.
Sure.
And just as surely, we've probably been on the receiving end of a damaging one that really stung. It makes you wonder then, with all this complexity, why do we lie so often? Let's dive into some of the fundamental human motivations that the source material explores.
Okay. Well, one of the primary motivations, and perhaps one of the most obvious for lying, is simply to gain an advantage or achieve some form of personal or professional gain. We live in what often feels like a very competitive world, right? And gaining an edge over others, whether it's in the job market, a business negotiation, or even just social standing, is often viewed as a direct path to success. Lying can become a tempting, albeit pretty risky, strategy to try and achieve that.
So like padding your resume.
Exactly. The source gives a very relatable illustrative example of John, a job candidate. He's competing for this lucrative position, let's say, that requires extensive knowledge of a specific software he's actually quite unfamiliar with.
Okay.
During the interview, he confidently claims extensive work with X software. He even goes so far as to fabricate a project where he supposedly used it to solve some complex problem.
Bold move.
Very. His thought process, as the source describes it, is something like, well, if I get the job, I can quickly learn the software on the fly, or maybe just delegate any tasks requiring it to someone on my team.
The fake it till you make it approach, but with potentially serious consequences.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this isn't an uncommon scenario at all. We see these everyday embellishments, maybe slightly less dramatic ones, in resumes, job interviews, even casual conversations all the time. An assistant office manager might subtly, upgrade their title to just office manager on LinkedIn to sound a bit more senior.
Right.
Or a bank clerk whose job primarily involved dealing with ordinary, maybe uninteresting customers will suddenly claim to have worked on major complex accounts when networking. These are strategic moves, often quite short-sighted, but they're driven by that desire for perceived advancement, a better salary, or simply a more impressive image.
And then sometimes the lie isn't really about getting ahead at all, is it? Sometimes it's about keeping the peace, maintaining those social bonds.
Yeah.
Lying to preserve harmony in relationships, that seems like a huge category that we probably engage with way more often than we even realize.
Oh, absolutely. Our fundamental human social need for connection, for belonging, means that social harmony often requires tact, diplomacy, and, occasionally a willingness to spare people the full burden of hearing an uncomfortable truth.
It's like the surprise party example we mentioned. Emma is meticulously organizing this surprise birthday bash for her best friend, Sophia.
Right.
And when Sophia innocently suggests, hey, let's spend my actual birthday together, Emma has to think fast. She lies, says she's too busy with work, got this big deadline coming up because she doesn't want to ruin the surprise.
The intent there is purely benevolent, isn't it?
Totally. It's to create a better experience for Sophia later, to preserve the impact of the surprise she's planned, and ultimately it's a way to affirm the depth of their friendship, ironically, through a small deception.
It's the classic white lie, often told to create a positive outcome or just avoid immediate discomfort. Or imagine your friend asks for your honest opinion on a really unflattering outfit they're clearly super enthusiastic about. Maybe they just bought it.
Oh, that's always awkward.
It is. Blunt honesty in that exact moment, while technically true, might cause unnecessary hurt feelings, could damage their self-esteem, and it would definitely disrupt the harmony of your friendship right then and there.
Yeah, probably not worth it.
Probably not. The source even brings up the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who famously said, "No facts, only interpretations." And that statement, I think, powerfully underlines the subjective nature of what we often present as truth. Often, what we call truth is really just our personal opinion or perspective. Like, your kids might enthusiastically claim their new band's music is amazing, but to your ears, maybe it sounds like, a chaotic cacophony.
There.
Right. Pure, unfiltered truths, especially negative ones or unsolicited opinions, can actually have detrimental effects on our mental health.
Right.
Persistent negative interactions can exacerbate anxiety or depressive symptoms, and this is precisely where the idea of altruistic deception comes in.
Altruistic deception. Okay.
These are lies that are considered morally defensible, perhaps, because they are told specifically to protect someone's feelings, preserve their mental well-being, or maybe even ensure their physical safety in certain situations. It's a calculated decision, really, to prioritize kindness or what seems like a greater good over just blunt factual disclosure.
And we also lie Very commonly, I suspect, just to avoid embarrassment or consequences.
Wow.
This feels like a really powerful and immediate motivator, driving both those small social deceptions and sometimes, unfortunately, large-scale cover-ups.
Definitely.
Consider Rebecca from the source. She bumps into an acquaintance she hasn't seen in years, but to her horror, she completely blanks on his name. Can't remember it at all.
Oh, the worst feeling.
Awful. So to avoid that immediate social awkwardness and the embarrassment of admitting her memory lapse, she quickly claims, "Yes. Oh my gosh, it's been ages. It's so good to see you again." She's desperately hoping he'll maybe introduce himself again to jog her memory.
Playing for time.
Exactly. But when he doesn't, she finds herself sort of doubling down, maybe fabricating little details about their last encounter, even though she has absolutely no genuine recollection. This fear of appearing forgetful or socially inept is such a common driver of these small, almost involuntary lies we tell.
It really is. And then, on a much larger and obviously far more serious scale, the source discusses instances like, say, city officials and plant management lying about contaminated water in a public supply.
That's terrifying.
It is. Their public statement is typically something reassuring like, our water supply remains clean and uncontaminated, and any health issues being reported are dismissed as completely unrelated. But meanwhile, covertly, they might be initiating hurried cleanup efforts, desperately hoping to fix the situation before it becomes widely known.
Because the fear is huge.
Palpable. The fear of loss of public trust, potential prosecution for negligence, massive lawsuits, financial ruin, and just the general chaos that would erupt if the truth actually came out. Here, as the source notes, you can have essentially honest, although maybe careless people end up deceiving an entire community, not necessarily out of malice, but out of this overwhelming fear of the severe, widespread consequences of their actions, or maybe their inactions. It's a desperate attempt to maintain order and control in the face of potential disaster. And then, at the extreme end of that spectrum, you have individuals like Mark, who the source describes as exhibiting traits commonly associated with psychopathy. He apparently lies to the police even when he's totally innocent, and clear security footage proves his innocence beyond doubt.
Why would he do that?
For him, according to the source, lying isn't primarily about avoiding consequences or achieving some tangible gain. It's just for the sake of lying. It's like a game, a way to test his manipulative abilities and derive some kind of perverse sense of positive energy from misleading others. He doesn't need an obvious rational reason to deceive. The act itself seems to be the reward for him.
That's disturbing. It's incredible, really, to think about the sheer range of motivations behind lying.
Yeah.
And sometimes it seems lying isn't even a conscious strategy at all. It can simply become a deeply ingrained habit, or maybe even a form of self-deception. Consider Emily from the book. She's always had this strong aversion to burdening others with her problems. So from a young age, her automatic, almost Pavlovian reaction to the simple question, "How are you?" has been a quick, often dismissive, "I'm fine," whether she actually was fine or not.
The default answer.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes almost a reflex, a habitual pattern of behavior, just deeply ingrained over years and years. Sometimes she might use it genuinely just to avoid sharing misfortunes or to maintain a sense of privacy. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
But other times, paradoxically, the source suggests it can actually be a cry for help, a subtle lie told in the subconscious hope that the other person will maybe sense the underlying distress, pick up on the nonverbals, and ask more probing questions. That would make it easier for her to open up without having to explicitly initiate a potentially difficult conversation herself.
That's fascinating. And this phenomenon, this habitual lying, or even the cry for help lie, leads directly to a really interesting and somewhat unsettling psychological reality the source highlights. If you repeat a lie often enough, you'll start to believe it.
Right, I've heard that.
Yeah. The source explains that the human brain actually has an inherent difficulty distinguishing between what we repeatedly say or think and what truly happens in objective reality. A lie, once it's told and then reinforced through repetition, eventually becomes kind of woven into our perceived memory.
So it feels true, even if it isn't.
Exactly. It won't literally make the external fact true, of course, but it becomes true in the mind of the perpetrator, and sometimes even influences the victim's perception if the lie is pervasive enough. Politicians and agitators, the source points out, are highly aware of this psychological vulnerability and frankly exploit it relentlessly to manipulate public perception and shape narratives. It's a very powerful tool in influencing collective belief systems.
And here's where it gets particularly interesting on the self-deception front, I think. The source mentions that certain personality types, specifically those often categorized as yellows within the DISC model, we'll get more into DISC later, are apparently particularly likely to lie to themselves.
Okay, yellows and self-deception.
Yeah. They seem to possess this natural tendency to filter out bad news, negative feedback, or uncomfortable truths. They instinctively replace them with brighter, more enjoyable, or maybe more self-flattering memories and narratives.
Like an internal PR agent?
Kind of. And it isn't necessarily a conscious, malicious act. It's often described as more of a defense mechanism, a way their brain maintains a positive self-image and an optimistic outlook. But this can manifest as hubris or inflated self-confidence, making them genuinely believe their own embellished narratives, even if those narratives don't really align with objective reality. It can create significant blind spots and potentially lead to poor decision-making because their internal reality is no longer anchored to, well, facts.
And this self-deception, whether it's conscious or unconscious, really shapes the broader landscape of deception, especially in our modern data-driven world. We often hear that saying, numbers don't lie, do they?
Yeah, sounds solid.
But the truth is, while numbers themselves are neutral, just figures, they can be presented in incredibly deceptive ways to mislead and manipulate people. Statistics and graphs can be just as persuasive and, frankly, just as misleading as any old-time snake oil salesman.
Right, how the data is framed.
Exactly. The source provides some classic examples. Think back to those cigarette advertisements from the, say, 1940s and 50s claiming more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
Wow, I remember seeing those.
Right. It wasn't because doctors genuinely thought Camels were healthier or somehow medically endorsed them. It was based on a survey that simply asked doctors which brand they smoked most often. The methodology was intentionally vague, maybe even outright fraudulent by today's standards, and it led the public to mistakenly believe it was some kind of health endorsement from medical professionals.
Absolutely chilling how easily a simple statistic like that can be spun to imply something entirely different. And another example the source brings up, with far-reaching, devastating societal consequences, is that infamous 1999 article in the Lancet Medical Journal, the one that suggested a causal link between the MMR vaccine and autism.
Oh, that caused so much damage.
Immense damage. That paper, which was later fully retracted due to fraudulent data and ethical breaches, had far-reaching consequences. It caused a dramatic reduction in vaccinations worldwide and tragically led to the terrifying reappearance of serious, previously well-controlled diseases like measles.
And it took years to debunk it properly.
Years of extensive, rigorous research by scientific teams all over the world looking at hundreds of thousands of children to conclusively debunk those false claims. Study after study found absolutely no causal link whatsoever, but the damage was done. As the source says, fear had taken root in millions of parents, and sadly that fear persists in some circles even today.
These examples are such grim reminders that the onus is really on us as consumers of information to approach data critically. We have to question the sources, the methodology, and always consider the intent behind how information is being presented to us.
Definitely.
And it's not just the statistics themselves. The source emphasizes why a picture actually can be worth 1,000 words, but also why it can be worth 1,000 misconceptions. Our brains are just hardwired to process images incredibly quickly, something like 60,000 times faster than text.
Wow, that fast.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we instinctively lock onto visual cues before we even have a chance to reflect critically on the underlying data being represented. This inherent vulnerability allows for the creation of highly misleading graphs, where the visual representation is deliberately manipulated to exaggerate or perhaps downplay a trend.
How do they do that?
Well, for instance, with graphs showing things like, say, OxyContin dosage recommendations over time, or maybe charts depicting climate change with dramatic temperature changes. The axis, the vertical one, can be fine-tuned, manipulated to make even tiny incremental changes look incredibly dramatic or steep.
Changing the scale.
Exactly. The steeper you want a rise or fall to appear, the more you can manipulate the scale of that y-axis. Sometimes they'll even scale it down to hundredths of a degree for temperature, making minute fractional shifts appear like these monumental, alarming changes visually.
Sneaky. And beyond just the visual manipulation, the source wants us to look out for incomplete or skewed data being presented, right? Like a claim that our product is 50% more effective.
Right. That immediately begs the question, effective than what?
Then what? Exactly. Is it 50% more effective than the previous version of their own product? Is it compared to a competitor's product? Or is it just 50% more effective than doing absolutely nothing at all? Without that crucial comparative information, the statistic is effectively meaningless, just designed to impress or mislead.
Totally. Similarly, when a report states something like crime has dropped by 10% in the last year, a critical listener, someone really engaging with the info, might ask, okay, is this a genuine reduction in actual criminal activity, or is it simply because fewer crimes are being reported to the police for some reason? Or maybe the definition of what constitutes a crime has changed, or perhaps police activity and focus has shifted.
Those are the kinds of nuanced questions the book really encourages us to ask, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than just accepting these headline figures at face value.
Absolutely. And then there's that classic confusion, often deliberately exploited, between correlation and causality.
Yeah, correlation doesn't equal causation.
The classic example the source gives is easily understandable. Ice cream sales and the number of drownings both tend to increase during the summertime. This doesn't mean that eating ice cream somehow causes people to drown, nor does drowning make people crave ice cream.
Right, there's a third factor.
Exactly. It just means that people tend to both go swimming more often and eat more ice cream when the weather is warm. There's no direct causal relationship between the ice cream and the drowning. In stark contrast, smoking causes various health problems, including lung cancer. That's a definitive causal link established through decades of extensive research. It's such a critical distinction, but one that's often blurred or deliberately misrepresented by those pushing a particular agenda.
And this manipulation of data and visuals, it feels like it's just exploded in the digital age.
Oh, the digital landscape has truly become a breeding ground for sophisticated deception. It's amplified the potential for lies on an unprecedented scale. Take fake news and propaganda, for instance, which are far more pervasive, I think, than many people realize. The source specifically mentions troll farms, like the notorious internet research agency based in St. Petersburg, Russia. Their full-time, organized job isn't just to spread random misinformation. It's to produce propaganda disguised as news. Meticulously crafted content designed to appear legitimate and credible.
So it's deliberate, organized deception.
It's deliberate, often state-sponsored effort to influence perceptions, sow discord among populations, and manipulate public opinion on a massive scale. It's not just accidental misinformation floating around, it's targeted campaigns.
And we've seen terms like alternative facts creep into the mainstream lexicon, haven't we?
Yeah.
Thanks to figures like Kellyanne Conway, who famously used it when defending Sean Spicer's clear falsehoods regarding the crowd size at the Trump inauguration.
Right, that was a moment.
The source notes how that specific phrase became symbolic of what critics perceived as the Trump administration's less than rigid adherence to truth. While different news sources can, of course, legitimately present different interpretations or emphasize different aspects of events, the concept of alternative facts was widely seen, I think, as a blatant attempt to legitimize outright fabrication for a specific political agenda, really undermining the very concept of objective reality.
And alongside that, you have social media bots and the phenomenon of false amplification. These are sophisticated software programs, getting more sophisticated all the time, designed to mimic human behavior online. They like posts, they share content, they leave comments, and they artificially boost certain messages or hashtags to make them seem far more popular or widely accepted than they actually are in reality.
So they create a false consensus.
Exactly. This practice is intended to distort our perception of what is popular or agreed upon. It influences public opinion, it can divert attention from critical issues, and it spreads false information with absolutely alarming speed and reach. The source highlights the really concerning reality of, say, social media influencers who might have 95% fake followers, bot followers, which lends a completely false air of credibility and reach to their endorsements or their opinions.
It's a huge, insidious problem because it fundamentally distorts our perception of reality, what people actually think.
Yeah.
And it's not just automated bots doing the deceiving. We have increasingly sophisticated fake online personas being created by real people and outright catfishing going on.
Yeah, catfishing is particularly cruel.
The story of Alexander the Tech Guru from The Source is a perfect, almost unbelievable example of a fake persona. He was presented online as this accomplished tech executive, complete with glamorous photos, appearing on prestigious panels and photoshopped images, sharing deep insights on social media.
Sounds impressive.
Totally. But a curious journalist did some digging and eventually discovered that Alexander was actually a 17-year-old high school student named Alex. He gleaned his supposed insights from reading tech blogs and his impressive profile picture, stolen from the internet. It just highlights how alarmingly easy it is becoming to create and maintain incredibly convincing yet completely misleading digital personas.
And then there's catfishing, specifically in the context of online dating, which is, as you said, a particularly cruel form of deception. You have these cunning digital imposters, as the source calls them, hiding behind meticulously crafted false identities.
Building trust under false pretenses.
Precisely. These individuals create a fictional persona, often designed to be the victim's absolute ideal partner, and they build deep emotional connections. But underneath the surface, there are usually dark, manipulative intentions. They exploit vulnerability and trust, often to extract money, personal information, or just emotional investment, leaving victims devastated.
An influencer culture, too, has its own unique landscape of deception, often blurring the lines between an aspirational lifestyle and outright fabrication, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Asina O'Neill, who was a prominent Australian influencer, famously and quite bravely, I think, revealed the truth about her fictional online persona. She exposed the immense pressure she felt to constantly post, the countless retakes needed for just a single sincere-looking posture or photo, the demands of sponsors dictating content, and her own deep insecurities hiding behind that seemingly perfect, effortless facade she presented online.
That caused quite a stir.
It really did. Her revelation sparked a much-needed public debate about authenticity and the potential for fraud within influencer culture. Similarly, Caroline Calloway, another social media personality, has faced significant controversies over allegations of fraud, fabrication, and questionable ethics due to a perceived lack of clarity on the line between fact and fiction in her online narratives and paid workshops.
So the broader societal impact of all this, the disinformation, the fake news, the carefully constructed digital lies, it lies in its immense power to influence people's perceptions, their decisions, and sometimes even their actions, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's described in the source almost as a war for attention, and it thrives in environments where perhaps narcissists and manipulators can flourish, often unchecked, leveraging these tools for their own ends.
When we talk about liars, though, the concept isn't new, is it? Feels like it's as old as human civilization itself. History, myth, politics, they're just rife with examples revealing these timeless patterns of deception.
Oh, completely. The archetypal liar often cited, one that transcends cultures and religions, is frequently the devil, often referred to as Satan or Lucifer, depending on the tradition. In many religious contexts, his primary role is depicted as sowing confusion, tempting humans away from righteousness or truth, and creating division.
Like the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
Exactly. In the Christian tradition, he appears as that cunning serpent in Genesis, tempting Eve, skillfully making her question God's direct command not to eat the forbidden fruit. These ancient stories, the source points out, are ultimately profound allegories about human behavior. They're about the moral choice we all face between succumbing to or resisting temptation, and they highlight the inherent dangers of deceit. Even thousands of years ago, the sages and storytellers clearly knew people lied, and they wished it happened less often, precisely because of the pervasive problems and the societal unraveling it caused even then.
And of course, political deception is a recurring, almost ingrained theme throughout documented history. I just have to think of Bill Clinton's infamous, extremely declarative statement, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman."
Unforgettable line.
Absolutely. That quote became one of the most recognizable in modern history, stemming from his affair with Monica Lewinsky. Despite his initial, very forceful denial, the undeniable presence of DNA evidence on, famously, a blue dress eventually emerged. This forced him to change his story and publicly admit to having had an inappropriate relationship.
The legal parsing was intense, too.
It was. The source highlights the fine line between truth and lies, that skilled lawyers, such as his, can apparently troll. They suggested his previous statements were legally correct, perhaps based on a very specific definition of sexual relations, despite being clearly factually misleading to the public. This high-profile lie and its subsequent legal justification deeply impacted public trust in political figures for many people.
Then there's the pervasive, defining scandal of Richard Nixon and Watergate. The source succinctly calls it a sad tale from beginning to end. The initial break-in back in June 1972 at the Democratic National Committee headquarters seemed relatively minor on the surface, maybe just a third-rate burglary.
But it was the cover-up.
Exactly. It was the subsequent elaborate cover-up orchestrated from within the Nixon administration that ultimately led to his unprecedented resignation. The administration became thoroughly entangled in an absolute mess of lies and contradictions, with key figures eventually being implicated in obstruction of justice and perjury.
And journalism played a key role.
A crucial role. Investigative journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, relying heavily on information from an anonymous, high-level informant known only as Deep Throat for decades, played a critical part in relentlessly unraveling the layers of deception and bringing the truth to light. This event, the source notes, didn't just reduce Nixon to a mere political villain in the eyes of many. It left an indelible stain on the legacy of the American presidency and fundamentally reshaped the public's perception of political power and trustworthiness.
And let's not forget the Gulf of Tonkin incident. That was a controversial and decisive moment during the Vietnam War, wasn't it?
Hugely significant. This event, based on disputed, perhaps even fabricated, reports of attacks on U.S. naval vessels by North Vietnamese forces in August 1964, provided the U.S. government with a crucial pretext, the justification it needed, to dramatically escalate its military involvement in Vietnam. It led to the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, granting President Johnson broad war-making powers.
And there are theories about why it happened, beyond just direct orders.
Yes, the source discusses a compelling theory regarding bureaucratic momentum. The idea is that bureaucratic bodies, like military or intelligence agencies, once they start moving in a certain direction, gather so much inertia, so much internal pressure to proceed, that they become incredibly difficult to stop or redirect, even when faced with questioning facts or contradictory evidence. This incident was undeniably a powerful catalyst for increased U.S. involvement, solidifying political support for President Johnson at the time, and drastically intensifying the war, ultimately with devastating consequences for millions of people.
So beyond politics and myth, history is just filled with these audacious con artists, individuals who fabricated entire lives, exploiting human vulnerability with their own personal gain. Take the absolutely captivating story of Anna Anderson.
The Anastasia claimant.
Exactly. She appeared in New York back in 1928, claiming she was Anastasia Romanoff, the sole surviving daughter of the Russian Tsar Nicholas II, somehow miraculously escaping the brutal execution of her entire family during the revolution.
And people believed her, didn't they?
Many did. She received celebrity treatment, attended high society parties, and really lived the part. However, she ultimately lost several major court cases regarding her fictitious identity over the years. The irony is quite striking, isn't it, that she even married a history professor later in her life.
That is ironic.
It wasn't until DNA technology was finally invented and refined decades later that the truth was definitively proven. A sample from her was compared with DNA from a known Romanov relative and also from the exhumed bones believed to belong to the Tsar's son. The results conclusively debunked her elaborate claims, proving her to be a fraud, likely a Polish factory worker named Franciszka Sząskowska.
Wow. Then there's the more contemporary Anna Delvey, whose real name we now know is Anna Sorokin. She's infamous for her skillful fraud, posing as a wealthy German heiress and living this incredibly lavish New York socialite lifestyle that she couldn't possibly afford.
The Soho grifter.
Right. She cunningly infiltrated the city's elite art and social circles using extensive falsehoods, just completely fabricating her background and her financial standing. The source notes her remarkable degree of control and manipulation. She convinced sophisticated people, banks even, to believe her elaborate stories and extend her huge amounts of credit, even when faced with mounting unpaid bills, like the massive one at the luxurious 11 Howard Hotel where she lived for months.
And the author has a strong opinion on her future.
Yes, the author states quite bluntly that she's bound to launch new scams at the first opportunity because that's what psychopaths do. They don't change and they can't be cured, suggesting a deeply ingrained, perhaps unchangeable pattern of manipulative behavior.
And we simply cannot talk about colossal financial fraud without mentioning Bernie Madoff.
Oh, Madoff. The scale is just mind-boggling.
His staggering pyramid scheme, built on decades of meticulously constructed lies and completely fabricated investment returns, finally collapsed in late 2008 during the global financial crisis. It revealed a deception estimated at around $65 billion.
Unbelievable sums.
The author posits that Madoff possessed distinctively psychopathic traits. He can be charming and incredibly charismatic one moment, effortlessly building trust with sophisticated investors, and then apparently ruthlessly destroying a coworker, a client, or even friends and family financially the next, seemingly without a flicker of remorse or empathy.
Chilling.
A study mentioned by the source even found his personality traits scored alarmingly close to 100% on standard psychopathic checklists. This led one documentary director to chillingly call him a financial serial killer. His lies didn't just ruin people financially. They utterly destroyed lives, shattered retirement dreams, wiped out charities, and severely undermined public confidence in the entire financial regulatory system.
Then there's the Tinder swindler, Shimon Hayut, who posed as Simon Lviv, the supposed son of a wealthy Israeli diamond magnate. Another stark, very modern example of audacious fraud through calculated deception.
Right, using dating apps.
Exactly. He convinced multiple women from all over the world, women he met on Tinder, to give him millions of dollars collectively. He even encouraged them to take out substantial personal loans from banks, all under the elaborate guise of needing funds for his security due to supposed threats against him or for business deals that never materialized.
In his reaction to being exposed.
After a popular Netflix documentary exposed his elaborate scheme, he actually posted on Instagram asking people to keep an open mind and heart while he supposedly prepared to tell his side of the story. Many observers found this move to be a further display of manipulative narcissism rather than any sign of genuine remorse or accountability.
In the world of sports, Lance Armstrong really stands out as one of the most prominent liars of our time, doesn't he?
Huge story. After his miraculous recovery from advanced cancer and that dramatic, unprecedented run of 7 consecutive Tour de France victories, speculations about doping naturally arose.
He denied it vehemently for years.
Furiously denied it. For years and years, he sued his accusers, he consistently emphasized that he had never failed an official drug test, and he skillfully leveraged his cancer survivor status to generate sympathy and silence critics. However, his former teammate Floyd Landis eventually came out publicly to accuse Armstrong of systematic long-term performance-enhancing drug use within the U.S. Postal Service team.
And that opened the floodgates.
It did. A subsequent, incredibly thorough investigation by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, USADA, uncovered absolutely devastating evidence. This included detailed, sworn testimony from numerous former teammates, physical evidence like blood values, and financial transactions related to doping products. It unequivocally confirmed extensive and long-term drug use throughout his winning streak.
And his admission.
His eventual televised admission during an interview with Oprah Winfrey was described by the source as sincere and, I suspect, painful. It marks the definitive end of one of the most remarkable, celebrated, and ultimately deceptive careers in the history of professional sports.
Wow. What stands out to you about these infamous examples, whether they're historical figures or more contemporary ones? Is it just the sheer audacity, the scale of the deception, or is it maybe the insidious way they exploit such fundamental human tendencies like our need for trust, our hope, the desire for acceptance, or even just the basic human need for security and financial stability?
It's probably a combination of both, isn't it? The audacity is shocking, but the exploitation of trust feels more fundamental, because these stories, which become deeply embedded in our collective consciousness, they profoundly impact the very foundation of trust in society.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. Trust is such a fundamental, frankly irreplaceable component of any relationship, whether it's personal, professional, or societal. And once it's lost, as the source emphasizes repeatedly, it is incredibly difficult or impossible to rebuild. The source uses a simple yet really powerful analogy from developmental psychologist Erik Erikson, a ball game. If one person in the game deliberately starts throwing the ball too hard or too soft or consistently in the wrong direction, trust is fundamentally broken. The game just can't continue as intended.
Right, the cooperation breaks down.
Exactly. The immediate, visceral conclusion drawn by the other players is simple and direct. This person can't be trusted. What a jerk. And this same principle applies to more subtle forms of deception, too, like consistently withholding unpleasant or inconvenient truths from someone. The person you're deceiving will probably, eventually, get that nagging feeling that something's missing. A sense of unease or uncertainty creeps in, which is just not a solid foundation for any functioning, healthy relationship. It creates the subtle but pervasive erosion of faith over time.
And the impact on your reputation can be immense, can it? I mean,
Right.
what bigger asset could you possibly have in business, or just in life generally, than your good name, your reputation for integrity?
It's invaluable.
Lying can cost you jobs, career opportunities you might not even know you missed, and personal relationships that maybe took years to build.
Yeah.
For example, lying about your qualifications in a job interview, even if it initially lands you the position, means you eventually have to demonstrate those skills you claim to have.
The truth comes out.
Inevitably. If you fibbed too much, the truth will eventually surface, and you risk not only losing that job, but also severely damaging your professional standing for future opportunities. In personal relationships, being perceived as insincere or untrustworthy can cause you to miss out on deep, genuine connections with people who truly value authenticity. The consequences really do extend far beyond the immediate moment of the lie itself.
And beyond these external, sort of tangible consequences, dishonesty also has profound and often immediate effects on our own bodies and brains. This illuminates the internal cost of deceit. And here's where it gets particularly insightful from a biological perspective.
Okay.
Dishonesty actually forces the brain to enter a state of heightened alert. It triggers a stress response. And this physiological stress varies in intensity depending on the magnitude and complexity of the lie. Being told a little white lie might cause a blip. A major deception causes a storm.
What kind of physical signs?
Well, our bodies instinctively react. You might notice increased breathing, maybe a faster heart rate, a sudden onset of sweating, maybe a dry mouth, or an unsteady, wavering voice. These are all classic physiological signs that traditional polygraph or lie detector tests are designed to pick up on.
Right, the old lie detector. But what about the brain itself?
Brain scans, using technologies like CT scans or functional MRI, fMRI, offer even more profound insight into this internal turmoil. Lying specifically activates the limbic system in the brain. That's the same ancient system responsible for initiating our primal fight-or-flight response when we perceive a threat.
Interesting.
When someone is being truthful, this area of the brain typically shows minimal activity, indicating a state of neurological calm, sort of baseline functioning. But if they are actively engaged in deception, this region apparently lights up like fireworks on the scans, indicating significant neural activity and heightened arousal.
So basically, an honest brain is relaxed and a dishonest one is in a frenzy.
That's a good way to put it. An honest brain is relatively relaxed, operating efficiently, while a dishonest one is in a state of agitated frenzy. This strongly suggests, according to the source, that living a lie, then, can actually do harm to the brain over the long term by maintaining this chronic state of stress and hyperarousal.
Wow.
Some studies even suggest that the significant anxiety caused by chronic lying can manifest as physical symptoms like nausea or stomach issues, possibly due to that intricate gut-brain axis, that two-way communication channel between our digestive system and our brain that causes those familiar butterflies in our stomachs when we're nervous or stressed.
That makes a lot of sense. And then there's the fascinating and often quite unsettling aspect of lying to ourselves, internal deception.
Yes, self-deception. It's a big one. Our memory, as we kind of touched on, simply isn't some perfect, immutable video recording of events. It's a dynamic, reconstructive process. It's constantly being influenced by various factors like our current emotional state, new information we receive, and even our own desires and biases.
So memory isn't fixed.
Not at all. This is precisely why false memories can occur, where people genuinely recount vivid, detailed, personal memories of things that actually never happened. Research suggests that a surprising percentage of us, maybe up to 20%, according to some studies mentioned, have experienced these phenomena to some degree.
That's quite high.
It is, and to put it bluntly, going back to that earlier point, if you repeat a lie often enough, you'll start to believe it. The brain, over time, integrates that repeated fabrication into part of the perceived memory. It makes it incredibly difficult for our own brains to distinguish between what we consistently say or think and what truly occurred in objective reality. It's a powerful and often completely unconscious form of self-deception.
And this internal deception seems particularly prevalent in certain personality types, doesn't it? The source delves back into the DISC personality theory here. Maybe we should briefly recap that for listeners who aren't familiar.
Good idea. DISC is a widely recognized behavioral assessment tool. It categorizes individuals based on observable traits and tendencies, generally grouping them into 4 primary colors or styles: red, yellow, green, and blue.
Right. Reds are typically dominant, driven, results-oriented. Yellows are influential, expressive, optimistic, social. Greens are steady, supportive, harmonious team players. And blues are conscientious, analytical, detail-oriented, focused on accuracy.
That's a good quick summary. And this deep dive into the DISC types in the context of lying isn't just about putting people in boxes. It's really about equipping you, the listener, with a practical framework to maybe anticipate how different individuals might process or engage with deception, both as perpetrators and as potential victims or observers of lies.
Okay, so let's break down how lying might manifest across each DISC type according to the source, and maybe how they react when they are lied to. Let's start with reds.
Okay, reds. Characterized by that strong desire for power, control, and achieving results. For them, lying can often be seen as a pragmatic tool, maybe even a necessary one sometimes, to achieve their goals, assert authority, or gain that competitive edge they often seek. They are typically very direct and task-oriented.
So the lie serves the goal.
Exactly. When caught in a lie, while they might experience fleeting psychological consequences, maybe a bit of guilt or stress, the source notes their remarkable ability to recover quickly, brush this discomfort right off, and move on is most impressive. They prioritize the results, the outcome.
And how do they react when they are lied to?
That's different. When lied to, they tend to experience a significant loss of trust and credibility in the deceiver. For a red, trust is often foundational to efficiency and maintaining control, so deception by others is seen as a major impediment. Rebuilding that trust can be difficult or impossible. Interestingly, the source suggests they often don't see losing friends or damaging relationships as the end of the world, especially if those relationships aren't directly serving their objectives because they're typically more task-oriented than relationship-focused.
So understanding reds means recognizing their drive for control as a potential lying motivator, and also their low tolerance for perceived inefficiency or obstruction caused by others' deception.
Well put.
Okay, what about yellows? We touched on their potential for self-deception earlier.
Right. Yellows are typically highly expressive, optimistic, and very socially oriented. They genuinely dislike silence or social tension, often feeling insecure or nervous in its presence, and they actively strive to make situations positive, fun, and exciting for everyone involved.
The life of the party, maybe.
Often, yes. And they are prone to self-deception, as we discussed. They might often go astray or embellish narratives, not necessarily out of malice, but to make experiences seem more special, more exciting, or more impressive for the group. While they can certainly feel guilt when they lie, the source suggests they're remarkably adept at recovering quickly. They often convince themselves it never actually happened or rationalize that the lie was told for a good cause, perhaps just to avoid an awkward silence or simply to create a better, more entertaining story.
And when they are lied to.
When lied to, a yellow might initially try to dismiss it or find a positive spin, perhaps giving the benefit of the doubt. But repeated or significant deception can lead to a profound feeling of betrayal and a real loss of enthusiasm for the relationship. For a yellow, relationships and positive social connection are paramount, so that kind of betrayal is a significant emotional blow.
So knowing this helps you understand that their stretchers or exaggerations might be more about making you or the group feel happy or comfortable than about outright malice. But maybe also that you sometimes need to gently steer them back towards factual reality.
That sounds about right. Gentle reality checks might be needed occasionally.
Okay, next up, greens.
Greens. These individuals are typically characterized by a deep quest for harmony, stability, and a very empathetic mindset. You might instinctively think they'd be the least likely to lie, given their focus on harmony and relationships.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But ironically, the source suggests they are actually the most prone to telling white lies. Why? Because for a green person, conflict is often perceived as one of the worst things imaginable. It causes them immense internal discomfort.
So they lie to avoid conflict.
Precisely. They'll often go to great lengths to avoid raised voices, angry looks, or any form of direct confrontation. So they might tell a friend their unflattering new hairstyle looks great, or they might profess to agree with whoever spoke last in a meeting or group discussion, regardless of their true opinions, simply to maintain a positive atmosphere and avoid hurting anyone's feelings or sparking direct confrontation.
And how do they react when someone lies to them?
When lied to, a green will likely feel a profound sense of personal hurt and betrayal because their core value really is trust and interpersonal harmony. They might not immediately confront the lie directly, precisely because they want to avoid conflict, but the deception will erode their trust slowly and deeply. It often leads to withdrawal from the relationship or a quiet internal reevaluation of the person's trustworthiness.
So recognizing this helps you appreciate their strong desire for peace, but also maybe encourages you to be honest with them, even about difficult things, but to do so very gently and empathetically.
Absolutely. Gentleness and reassurance are key when delivering difficult truths to a green.
Okay, finally, the blues.
Blues. These individuals are typically careful, conscientious, and systematic. They place an extremely high value on accuracy, reliability, logic, and integrity. They are detail-oriented and approach things rationally.
So how do they handle being lied to?
When lied to, blues will likely first process their feelings internally, which might involve a period of quiet rumination and analysis. Then, they will often systematically seek clarification from the deceiver. They'll want to understand the reasons for the lies, the precise facts of the situation, and the implications of the deception. They'll demand a detailed explanation.
They want the data.
Exactly. Their systematic, logical approach allows them to address the problem directly and rationally, dissecting the deception piece by piece. They will then meticulously reassess the relationship, questioning whether they can ever truly trust the person again based on the evidence, and whether the relationship itself is worth maintaining based on objective facts and the perceived level of integrity demonstrated.
Less focus on feelings, more on facts and trust.
Generally, yes. The source points out that blues are often not particularly relationship-oriented to begin with, in the same deeply emotional way that yellows or greens might be. So, their decision to continue or end a relationship after being deceived heavily depends on the nature and severity of the lie, the liar's response, specifically their willingness to provide accurate information and demonstrate accountability, and the overall history of integrity within that relationship. Being deceived by a close friend or family member might still be more hurtful for them than by a distant acquaintance, but they are fully capable of logically deciding to move on if they deem the relationship not worth the effort, or if trust cannot be rationally reestablished.
So understanding blues means you absolutely must be prepared to provide clear, logical, factual explanations if you've been dishonest with them. Anything less, any vagueness or emotional appeal will likely just confirm their distrust.
That's a very accurate summary. Clarity and facts are paramount for blues.
Okay, so understanding these multifaceted motivations, the impacts, the personality tendencies, it's all crucial background for actually confronting lies effectively and maybe, just maybe, rebuilding trust when it's been broken.
Absolutely. As William Shakespeare famously wrote, "No legacy is so rich as honesty." To properly approach someone we suspect of dishonesty, the source suggests we must first try to enter the labyrinth of human psychology, as it were, and seek to understand their central motives for the deception.
Why do they do it?
Exactly. Are they lying out of simple self-preservation? This instinct is incredibly powerful, as we've seen. Children deny raiding the cookie jar to avoid immediate consequences, right? And adults might lie about a mistake at work for fear of retribution, losing their job, or professional embarrassment. Empathy and intuition are really key here. Well, sensing when something about someone's behavior doesn't quite add up, maybe a subtle shift in their demeanor, an evasive answer, a story that seems just a little too perfect or rehearsed. That feeling can prompt us to probe a bit deeper, to ask the right questions, but in a non-confrontational way. The aim is to gradually open a channel for the truth, maybe their underlying fears and their vulnerabilities to flow more freely. The goal should be to create a safe space for the truth to actually emerge, rather than just backing them into a corner.
Right, because the goal isn't just exposure. It's not public shaming, hopefully. Instead of just blurting out, "You're lying," which immediately puts someone on the defensive, makes them clam up or get angry.
Never productive.
Right. The source suggests a much more tactful and potentially productive approach. Maybe begin with something like, "Having trouble understanding this," or "Help me understand this part." This shifts the focus away from a direct accusation of deception and frames it more around your confusion and your concern. It offers the other person an immediate opportunity for clarity and explanation without feeling directly attacked.
Lowers the defenses.
Exactly. And acknowledging their evident difficulty, perhaps by saying something gentle, like, "I can tell that this is difficult for you to discuss," can be perceived as an outstretched hand, a gesture of empathy that might help lower their defenses further. Denial, as the source notes, is often deeply rooted in fear of judgment, fear of consequences, fear of losing face. This softer approach helps to gently break down those psychological barriers. The ultimate goal, ideally, is clarity and resolution, not simply to catch them in a lie, but to move towards understanding and, if possible, some form of reconciliation or path forward.
And ultimately, cultivating truth in our own lives, both personally and in our relationships, really means embracing vulnerability and authenticity. Every single time you choose honesty, the source emphasizes, you'll be taking a step toward a life of trust and integrity. This isn't just some abstract moral imperative. It's presented as a practical path to more fulfilling relationships and perhaps greater inner peace.
Choosing vulnerability over the facade.
Precisely. Choosing vulnerability over maintaining that facade of perfection or constant strength or invulnerability actually strengthens our inner resolve and helps build genuine, resilient connections with others. It's certainly not easy, especially in cultures that often value stoicism and always appearing strong or fine, but the argument is that it's absolutely essential for deep, meaningful human connection.
So how do you start, if that feels daunting?
The advice is practical. Start out small. At first, maybe just start sharing little truths with close, trusted friends, perhaps acknowledging a small mistake you made, admitting a minor imperfection, or sharing a genuine feeling that might feel just slightly uncomfortable to express. And practically, the source suggests something like, keep a diary, write down your feelings. This creates a safe place for you to be vulnerable, even if only in front of yourself initially. It helps you process your emotions, understand your true self better, and over time, it makes the allure of lies lose some of their power because you're already confronting reality internally.
That makes sense.
In vulnerability, the argument goes, we don't just find an alternative to lies. We actually find a powerful path towards richer, more meaningful life experiences and truly authentic connections with others.
And shifting back to being consumers of information, cultivating a skeptical mindset seems like it's our most valuable asset, as the source puts it, in this world that's more connected than ever, yet paradoxically feels often more misleading than ever.
Absolutely critical. Don't rely on a single news outlet or just a narrow set of sources that always confirm what you already believe. Actively seek out and consume news from diverse, reputable sources to get different points of view and a more balanced perspective on complex issues.
And always remember that news, even from the most respected institutions, is ultimately written by people. Right?
Exactly. And people are very rarely neutral or completely objective. Understanding journalistic bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, maybe ideological or even just structural due to ownership or advertising pressures, is crucial because our own existing opinions and values can unconsciously filter and project onto everything we read or watch, often reinforcing what we already believe without us even realizing it.
Confirmation bias trap.
Precisely. The source also highlights the insidious dangers of those echo chambers and filter bubbles, often created by algorithms on social media platforms. Our shared opinions get constantly reinforced, while dissenting views are muted or actively excluded from our feeds. This creates a distorted sense of reality where our own beliefs are rarely challenged, making us much more susceptible to misinformation that fits our existing worldview.
Yeah.
It issues a powerful warning suggesting that a simple click of the share button ought to require us to take responsibility for spreading nothing but verified, balanced information. That responsibility has never been more critical, especially with rapidly advancing technologies like deepfakes.
Oh yeah, deepfakes are terrifying.
You really are. They serve as such a timely and chilling reminder that far from everything we see, however convincing it may seem, has any connection to truth or reality. We have to develop a keen eye for subtle inconsistencies, question the source, question the context, question everything, really.
So the general advice, then wrapping that up, is to dare to trust your own gut feeling. If it feels wrong, it might be wrong. Don't just dismiss those instincts too quickly or overlook things for too long simply because accepting them might be convenient or comforting. In an age that feels inundated with digital scams, manipulated media, and these carefully constructed narratives, cultivating a vigilant, discerning, and actively engaged mindset is probably our best defense against falling prey to deception ourselves, and importantly, against inadvertently spreading it to others. So we've taken a really comprehensive deep dive today into the multifaceted nature of truth and lies. We've explored the elusive definitions, the compelling complex reasons why we lie, how deception manifests in our frankly confusing modern society, and the profound impact it has on individuals and the very fabric of our relationships. Our mission throughout this deep dive was really to provide you, our listener, with some tools, some frameworks for enhanced awareness, and maybe some practical navigation in this increasingly complex landscape of truth and untruth. So, what does this all mean for you personally listening right now? It's interesting, the book presents a how honest are you quiz, but it immediately introduces this fascinating paradox.
Hmm.
A notorious liar, someone perhaps adept at self-deception, might actually lie on the quiz about how much they lie, giving themselves a surprisingly lower, more honest score than a truly honest person who candidly admits, yeah, actually, I do tell white lies sometimes, or I did lie about that one thing.
Right. The test itself is flawed by the very nature of what it's testing.
Exactly. It really highlights just how intricate and challenging self-reflection can be when it comes to truly understanding our own relationship with deception.
It really does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think it emphasizes that seeking truth and building trust is not really a destination you arrive at, but rather a continuous journey. It's a deliberate choice we have to make every day in interactions big and small. Every single time you choose honesty, the source reiterates near the end, you'll be taking a fundamental step toward a life of trust and integrity. It's the small, consistent acts of truth, however uncomfortable they might feel in the moment, that will gradually weave a web of trust around us and strengthen our most important human connections.
That's a powerful thought.
It is. And the source offers a final challenge, or perhaps a piece of advice. As you navigate your own interactions, if you should find yourself tempted to deviate from the truth, maybe for convenience, or to avoid awkwardness, or for perceived gain, just pause for a moment. Take a breath and genuinely consider the potential consequences, not only for yourself and your own peace of mind, but for all the people who will inevitably be impacted by your words and actions. Ask yourself the simple question: if I just lay the truth bare right now, what's the absolute worst that could really happen?
And often the anticipated catastrophe isn't as bad as we imagine.
More often than not, the source suggests, you'll find that the immediate discomfort of telling the truth, while maybe unpleasant, can't actually do as much long-term harm as the slow, corrosive effects of deception, the breakdown of trust, the need to maintain the lie. In the end, arguably, our genuine relationships with other people are often the only things we'll truly have left that matter. And the most meaningful human connections are, at their very core, built on a foundation of truth, however complicated or challenging it may be sometimes to uphold it.